What I love most about the aesthetic of the film Her is the mixing of time periods.
They draw them into these characters and the lives they live and the stories they're trying to tell. The reason why the production designer's job is so important is because they bring the audience into the worlds that the films are set in, and they create the immersive experience that you're looking for.
It's an important balance to mix vintage with new, with found, with expensive, with lower budget, and I feel like that's how you get a space that feels really lived in. Everything in the world can be an inspiration if you're looking at the details. My name is Melanie Burstin, and I'm an interior designer.
Spike Jonze is a truly innovative film director. This is one of the first movies that he wrote and directed. He has a way of capturing raw emotions and tell pretty familiar storylines, but in a more unconventional way.
This movie talks a lot about technology and our relationship to it.
Her is a romance between a writer and his operating system.
To watch someone be so lonely and then to find something in the digital age that really saves them.
It is set in a familiar world, which is Los Angeles, but Los Angeles in the future, but in the near future, so you're not able to really tell exactly what period it is. It's a bit ambiguous. So when the audience watches a movie like this, they are familiar with some of the items they grew up with, which makes the space and the world they're looking at familiar to them. So it doesn't feel like it's too far out. It's where they're headed.
The first thing I did when designing this space was to rewatch the movie. And so I saw Her and I thought about all of the details, right? The bones of the movie, the bones of the architecture in the movie, the colors, the materials. And that was kind of how I started my visual language. Then I started sourcing. I went to some of my favorite stores in Los Angeles and considered vintage and new and what I could do to really make a real life living room. For this project, I had 2 weeks and a budget of $5,000. One adjustment for designing this space was that the client was not real. So Joaquin Phoenix was kind of my inspiration client for this. So I designed the space for a not real person, whereas normally I'm talking to and emailing with a real person. So a lot of their personal details and aesthetics and things they already owned are a part of the space. So that was kind of interesting to lose that half. But then I also had an entire film to go off of, so perhaps it was like I had more of my client. I think everything that I do informs my design aesthetic, whether that's traveling or shopping or just being in a bathroom at a restaurant. You know, everything in the world can be an inspiration if you're looking at the details. It's really important to me that a space is well designed but also functional in a comfortable way, so I always try to consider how a space is going to be used. I think about the bones of a space, I think about who's going to be in the space, and then I start with the aesthetics and make sure that it's all going to make sense for those people in those spaces. When I was younger, I was working in art galleries in Los Angeles, and that gave me a lot of experience, and I was able to then reach out to a few interior designers in LA, and I'm lucky enough that I found some great women to be my mentors. I designed Goop's offices in Santa Monica, and that was really fun and challenging as well. I think I draw a lot of inspiration from art, and film is art. When watching the movie Her, you have to acknowledge that it really has a lovely color to it, and you can tell a colorist spent quite a lot of time on it. So I wanted to try and make sure that my design was referential to that as well.
There were pops of orange and red and yellows. They were lit a certain way too. The main character is in red most of the time, and they wanted to bring a certain warmth to this movie. When we talk about the design of Theodore's apartment, it's very interesting to see how the set decorator brings in pieces of furniture from different time periods, and so you can't really place the period from where it is. It's almost like how we are fascinated by something more retro. Decades keep recycling back into our lives, and that's what she did. You could also notice how Theodore in his apartment is actually living his bachelor life, so he has had a rough divorce. There is one scene where you see a single chair out on the balcony, which is away from the 3 chairs that are in his living room, and so it kind of shows like this isolation that he feels.
I think it's crazy that 2 of my favorite movies happen to be Lost in Translation and Her, which apparently are made about the same divorce. Lost in Translation is by Sofia Coppola about her perspective, and then Her is by Spike Jonze about his perspective. It's just so strange to me that they both spoke to me so much. And it's really hard to deny how pretty this movie is. Even if what they're talking about at times isn't that beautiful, it's shown beautifully. I also think it's special that it's in a futuristic LA that you also can't quite pinpoint time. That's just so intriguing to me. It's really special.
Her was the 4th collaboration for Spike Jonze with his production designer KK Barrett. Together they recreated a familiar Los Angeles that was actually mixed in with a little bit of Shanghai. Bringing in the 2 cities in a seamless way was how they decided to show LA in the future.
It was kind of serendipitous that this film is based in LA because I'm based in LA. So I got to use some of my favorite LA vendors, and it was kind of just like walking through LA, just like Joaquin Phoenix does. 2 of my favorite places to shop in LA are Amsterdam Modern and Plant Material, so I obviously had to visit them for this. Amsterdam Modern is an incredible vintage warehouse near downtown LA, and a lot of vintage in LA isn't that accessible, but I always feel like I can find something in budget there. They have really curated special space, and I just knew that they would have something perfect for this. I really enjoy sourcing vintage. I feel like it adds layers to a space, so I do vintage and new and mix them together.
Something that was really cool to learn is how they designed the device in which Samantha talks from. He carries her around in his pocket. When they were looking at how to design this piece, they looked into the 1940s like craftsman style. The designer got a bunch of different items like address books and Zippo lighters and cigarette cases from like thrift stores, and he like held on to what would be more tangible and what would be more tactile to like work and function as a device, and they went on developing the design from that. And I think that's a really cool way to do it, because then you're not focused on something like a hologram coming out of like a really sleek looking glass piece.
When I'm almost finished designing a space, I think that plants are the perfect finishing touch. So my favorite place in Los Angeles to shop for plants is Plant Material. It's just beautiful to be there, so it's so fun to walk around and shop there. But they also have more unique options. Sometimes it's worth it to look for something slightly more unique. I think I took a literal and referential take on putting her into this space that I designed. I think there are literal representations that I can speak to that are taken directly from the movie, and then I also tried to focus on vibe and feeling of this space that the main character lives in, and I tried to translate that into a space here. One thing that I really like about the apartment is that it's pretty minimal, and that's because of the story, right? It's like he just went through a divorce, so there are boxes on the ground and the shelves aren't that styled. So though I am a minimalist, I went even more minimal because it just felt more appropriate for this. I started designing the space by focusing on a wall unit because that felt really reminiscent of the film. And then I also did a vintage sofa, a new rug, and some art to tie it all together. The wall unit is definitely an anchor to the space. It's almost an exact reference to his apartment. One great thing about the wall unit is that it also has a desk element. So on the desk, I put a nice computer screen. You can't have a room based off of the movie Her without a little bit of technology. In the movie, he has a sole chair, right? And there's always this stereotype of the guy with the one chair. So I wanted to expand on that and make this space more livable. So I went for a full sofa, but it's still reminiscent of a vintage leather piece. The coffee table is pretty simple, but it is a contemporary piece. It felt like a nice juxtaposition since the movie has so many different elements of different time periods. I was really inspired by the office scenes in the movie. They have these super large colored panels, and you can't help but identify the movie with those panels. And I tried to create an art piece that was not that obvious, but definitely referential to those panels. And I feel like it came out really nicely, and it's a nice conversation piece. Over the sofa, I went for a photograph. I felt like that was another splash of contemporary pieces in this look. I focused on cityscapes of Los Angeles because that feels very important to her. Her takes place in a futuristic Los Angeles, so this is a beautiful photo of our current skyline. I actually purchased the photo on Etsy. It costs under $5. You print it yourself. You have to pay for the printing fee, but this makes art accessible and affordable. When shopping at Amsterdam Modern, there are so many beautiful pieces, but this lamp really shined, and it felt like it was what we needed to use in this space. What I particularly like about it is that it's kind of space agey, which is another type of vintage. These different materials and times kind of blend together to create an aesthetic, just like the different time periods in Her blend together to create this new aesthetic. One thing that I had to add in, because it's one of the weirdest parts of the movie, is this little space guy figurine that I've added in. That is a reference to the video game section where he's playing a video game and it seems fun, but then there's this strange futuristic alien like cursing at him, and it's just such a different tone from the whole rest of the movie, but it's very Her and I loved it. My favorite way to finish a space is with plants. I feel like adding that living layer really pulls the space together, it makes it feel livable, and makes it feel homey. So that's why we went to plant material, because we needed plants. Especially if it's gonna be a Melanie Burstin design, definitely need plants. I'm Melanie Burstin, and that's how you style this.